Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the first podcast of the Veritas Project with founder Robert Curtis. And you can find Veritas Project on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And I am investigator Todd Boyer. And Robert, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about Veritas Project?
Well, we started doing investigations back in the 90s. It was myself, and my roommate, and his girlfriend basically started going out to haunted houses in San Diego and just going around. Anybody who had a story to tell, we'd go listen to them, and that's really where it got traction. So.
Alrighty, and my background is been a paranormal investigator for about 4 years. You can find Investigator Todd on Facebook, if I didn't mention that before, but I've just been kind of doing this, and we've collaborated in the past with some other stuff. And we decided, hey, let's do a podcast.
Yeah, it seems to be the thing lately.
So I guess our thing tonight is the alien attacks in Peru.
Yeah, it's crazy.
If any of you guys have looked into this stuff, obviously it's not going to be a top story in the news. They're kind of tucking this thing away. But a village in Peru has been attacked by aliens.
Right, and it's not like the usual run-of-the-mill like alien abduction or thing that you hear about. There's actual evidence. There's crazy reports coming out of this place.
Yeah, and at the very beginning, the news was running with it. I mean, they were like, alien attacks, and of course the United States got involved, and suddenly it became a multitude of other things that we will get into. And so why don't you go ahead and tell the story of what's going on down there, how it all started.
Well, in the beginning, it started in late July, and we were on vacation in Boston, of all places, and I started getting these messages to the Veritas Project, and they're like, hey, have you heard about these aliens in Peru? And I was like, oh, like Puma Punku, from the million years ago? No, it's brand new. So I started looking into it, and I told my wife, I'm like, this is crazy what's going on down there. This isn't like oddball talking about tin hat stuff. Like, these are people shooting videos in their little village, and they show aliens, like real, legit aliens.
Now, they grew up knowing the stories of these aliens.
Pelicadas, they call them, face peelers.
Yep. And this is part of their history.
Right.
And now suddenly they're taking people out of this village. They pulled a girl from this village. They came and got her and took her away. Right.
And she had severe lacerations on her neck from where the alien... We're just going to refer to them as aliens, even though it's
we don't even know what to classify them as.
What it even is. But we're just going to refer to them as aliens. Because they're an alien thing. They're not... It's not a person for certain.
So go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
But yeah, and it's every person here is in this village is just a small time person. They're not media seeking individuals. They live in the jungle of Peru. There's no reason for them to be lying about this. The reason why it first came out is because they're looking for help. Because people are being abducted in this village and coming up missing. And they found a man on the bank of the river with his face torn off completely. Just you can look it up on the internet. I'd warn you not to be around children when you look at it, though, because there's legit a guy who's missing his entire face and the bone is white, like it's been steamed off.
Wow. And then, like we said before, this is something that's been in their culture for generations and generations of these things coming around. And now suddenly they're just like, they decided, it's all out war.
Right.
And they actually got into a battle, and the residents of the village have shot at these things and hit them. Yeah. Let's talk about the fun part. Let's talk about the jetpacks.
That is, whenever Americans get involved in anything, they ruin it right away. So what happened was, these people were releasing cell phone footage that they were recording their interactions with these monsters in the jungle, and they had clear videos of these things doing insane things. Like in the one video, it's standing on a tin roof and they're shining their flashlights at it, and it's kind of ducking around, and then it goes like transparent like the Predator and like floats away. And then in another video, the guy, it's hard to explain in the video, but if you watch it, there's a guy who has a soccer shirt on and some flip-flops, and he is the mayor of this town. And he and this woman ran face-to-face with one in between two buildings, and he blasted it point blank with a shotgun, and it just turned around and disappeared. So...
And these things are just... and they're flying away. It's not
Right.
like they're just running away or walking away. They're actually flying away. And then when I say that, also they're moving around at like 3 feet off the ground.
Right. He said they have discs on their feet, and you can see like a red light emanate from it, and they can either hover or they float away like somebody on a hoverboard, or they can just fly up into the trees instantly. They have complete control over it.
So we go back to what you said is when the Americans get involved, it gets
Right.
crazy. So when this originally started, of course, the news and media down in that area picked it up and said, hey, this is aliens, this is what's going on. And then, this town was begging everyone for help. And, well, what happened? The military and the Americans got involved, and suddenly these discs that these guys were riding turned into jetpacks.
Right.
And what is their explanation besides the jetpack? Who are these people?
Well, the story from what I've heard from the people who were there, right, not the media, the one guy from the American military, well, let's say the industrial complex that they are, handed this kid a phone with a picture of a jetpack in it. The guy's riding like a drone with a jetpack on, and he says, "Is this what it looked like?" And the kid said, "Possibly, but it was dark." And they're like, well, that doesn't matter. You just hold the picture up and say, "This is what it was." And then he's like, hi, I'm holding this person's phone. Thank you very much. And then that's the picture that the Western media ran with. It's a kid holding someone else's phone with someone else's picture on it, and they say, see, it's debunked.
Also, they're saying that these are not aliens, that they are gold miners
Gold
from the
miners.
cartels.
But there's been no arrests.
And we've looked, Bob and I have both looked into the prices of these jetpacks, and they're upwards. They start at about $300,000, and the other prices I've seen go up into close to $500,000.
Right.
And the longest flight time we found, most of them, 99% of them, is under a minute.
Right.
And the only one that has a flight time of 9 minutes is the one that you actually strap on your back that looks like a wing, and it has a jet engine on it that lets you fly. You may have seen those above Dubai, those videos. That's
Right.
the only one that has a flight time of more than a minute. All the rest are less than that.
And the reason why you can rule that out immediately is because there's no sound whenever they do it. They're standing there 2 feet off the ground, and then they leap into the tree, and it doesn't make any noise at all. So how does a DARPA jetpack with a kerosene-powered jet engine not make any sound? It doesn't. It doesn't hold any water.
Well, to kind of spring off of this, did you see that in Vegas there was a boy who called 911 and said he had aliens in his backyard?
Right.
And Homeland Security came out and put cameras on top of their house.
Right.
So, and I know everybody's heard that, the government's saying there's aliens now. My question is, what are they covering up? Why are these aliens suddenly popping out? What's got them stirred up? I mean, are we about to have nuclear war? I mean, this could take you down a lot of different roads.
Well, if you want to connect dots, the description of the aliens in Peru, the description of the aliens in the backyard in Las Vegas, and the ones that they uncovered in the basement of Dulce Base are identical. All three of those aliens have the same exact description.
And all are supposed, and the ones in Peru are supposedly underground dwelling.
Right.
And we have been discussing this podcast for a while, and we've done our research over the past couple of weeks, and I had one of them weird, crazy epiphany, go off the rails moment. So, have you ever seen the biblical description of a angel? Have you ever seen the pictures of those?
Yeah.
What if, now this is totally off the rails, total craziness, what if the below ground dwelling aliens are depicted as the demons, and the angels that we see as, because if you've seen those pictures, those angels are really crazy looking. What if
Yeah.
that was another species of alien that had come down and battled this species of alien, and this species has gone underground to hide and have been there for thousands of years?
Since the Great Flood, probably.
I know that's that's way off the rails, but I mean, our stuff from, dragons and all that kind of stuff, all that mythical stuff, it's in every society.
Yeah.
Where did that stuff come from? I mean, you've got all these societies all over the world telling you the same story about a same hypothetical mythical creature of a dragon.
Right.
Where did it come from? Why has everybody got it?
There
Why
had
does
to have
everybody
been-
have the pyramids? All our stuff from the past had to come from some point of truth somewhere.
Exactly. And then the similarities are too perfect to be from 4,000 years ago in different continents, and people never even met each other.
Yeah, and so, sorry, got a little derailed there, but going back to these alien attacks and whatnot, like I said, and the government coming out and saying that, yes, finally aliens are real. We found bodies, we found ships, and,
Right.
there's...
Recovered.
Yeah, there's agents that are now coming out of retirement, they've retired, that worked at Area 51, and they're saying this is what we found.
Right.
And it makes me wonder why suddenly the government is okay releasing this kind of information.
Especially as hard and heavy as they were in the 70s and 80s with Richard Doty and the Mirage Men going out to discredit people. And they ruined people's lives who came forward and said, I had an encounter with an alien. They literally bankrupted people to keep that information quiet.
Now, there was a man with the last name of Schneider. We touched on this briefly, you and I, in a conversation, who was basically out in one of these underground labs, and they were going down and they dug into the caves, and the guy got hit with an energy weapon,
Right.
lost, I know he lost fingers, he lost a leg, and the only reason he says that he's alive is because a special forces operator threw him back into the hallway and sacrificed himself to save his life because they had broken into an underground cavern with these aliens inside.
Right. That's the Dulce base story that I told you about. That is a fascinating read. They build these bases in like an onion, and they go into the ground deeper and deeper, and tell.
It's like the umbrella kind of thing. From,
Right. And as they were building these layers deeper and deeper, they fell into a cave system, or they found a cave system, and then they noticed that things were going missing when they were trying to set up their scaffolding and things. So they went to investigate, and the people who went to investigate said that there's monsters down there, 10-foot tall monsters, and they're like, yeah, whatever, So the security people, because this is a top secret military base, the security, Air Force security goes down there, and they were like, yeah, no joke, this is legit. There is some kind of monster in the unders of this place. So then they got into a firefight with them, trying to retrieve the workers from there. So then they, of course, are like, we're the Air Force,
Right.
We're not combatants on this level. So they called what I believe to be the Delta Force. They didn't say who they were, but they, when you call up the Army and you're like, I need somebody to come swing some pipes over here, you're not going to get, you're going to get pretty much the Delta Force shows up. So then they went down there and got into a protracted firefight with these monsters for days. And that's when this guy, he was just an engineer. He went down there to try to secure the power, and they set up a perimeter and were trying to get him to help cut the power off down there, and that's when the aliens showed up and started attacking him. And he had a little Walter PPK in his pocket, a little 380, and he emptied the magazine into this thing, and he said that it didn't even move. It was like an automated self-defense system that this alien entity had on its body, and like out of its chest, this blue beam came out and, like he said, blew his fingers off, burned 30% of his body, and then the Delta Force guy grabbed him by the shoulder and swung him around the corner before the big blast of it went off, and it cleared out the entire hallway. kind of like the Predator at the end of the Predator. It blew the whole hallway apart. So then they were like, okay, well then how we'll fix this is we'll just fill the bottom 3 layers of our building with concrete and just lock them in down there. So there's no way that they'll come back.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking is the government, they're willing to put out information. If you notice, they never say anything about living aliens or anything like that. So they're willing to put out information that, hey, we've found stuff, we've got some bodies. But I don't think they're ready to release anything as far as we have living aliens. We have seen them, they're here. I don't think they want to put that stuff out. And it's funny because we talked about the kid in Vegas who saw him in his backyard, and they denied that they put any cameras up on this kid's house.
Right.
But then if you look, you'll find videos and pictures of the cameras that were placed on top of this kid's house.
Exactly.
And so they want to deny everything, but but hey, our government would never lie to us, right?
They didn't admit that anything had gone on in Vegas until they found out there was body cam footage that was in public domain. That's when the government's like, all right, you got us. We'll admit this time, right?
And we actually were located in an area where there was a huge sighting several years ago that was followed by law enforcement and firefighters, and it went on for multiple hours, followed by multiple precincts from multiple counties, right in the area that we're in.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of those that you have to look for it. Otherwise, you won't find the information.
And the beautiful part about that sighting is, my personal connection to that sighting is I saw a UFO there in that flight path when I was a little kid. When I was like 4 years old, I saw a UFO in that same flight path that meets this description. But the best part about this UFO sighting is it's 100% the military and the police and fire departments that saw it. They were talking to each other on their microphones, the radio, saying, "Hey, I'm following it to such and such road. If it's going through your jurisdiction, if you want to meet us there, you can, follow it." And the other police would meet them at the edge of their jurisdiction and be like, "Yep, there it is." There it is.
And this is in the Midwest, and it was a slow-moving triangle that actually moved in a triangle-ish formation as it went around. It's where it was going. And this is not just, hey, it's a 10-minute deal. This went on for several hours.
Yeah.
Like from the middle of the night until morning, and commuters actually saw it in the morning.
Right.
And it finally ended at the middle of rush hour in the morning.
Right, where they couldn't triangulate it anymore. It just drifted away. Which is crazy to think about. And the weirdest thing about that story is it's all 100% legit. They have the radio communications are recorded. The 911 calls are recorded, but you'll never find anything about it unless you dig to find it. Yep. And you would think the media would be all over that because it's all police officers that saw it.
So what do you think of the Tic Tac ships?
That is a weird thing because that once again it's the Navy that's saying they saw it. So I mean it has some provenance when you're talking to people who are trained to look at radar screens and people who are trained to look out in the ocean and see things that are different. Then you have F-18 pilots that they know how to lock onto a drone, they know how to lock onto another airplane, and they lock onto this thing and they're having a party like, look, I caught it. It is weird.
And pilots have been saying they've been following this stuff around for years, and I actually just saw something recently. The flight patterns that these things takes when they, come across them would literally turn us into mush because the G-forces, the velocities that they reach in a short amount of time, the acceleration would just turn a human body into smush.
Right, it makes an L-shaped turn. At speed. Yeah,
90-degree turn at Mach 2 or whatever.
Right. They're doing 800 miles an hour and they just make an L-shaped turn in the sky. You're like, there's no aircraft that can do that.
And cut the aircraft off. Not only just make that turn, but literally go from behind the aircraft at a dead stop to cutting the aircraft off.
Right.
Cutting the jet off. So it's just ridiculous what things can.
And the altitude that they fly at is unbelievable. They can go from literally on the ocean to 40,000, 50,000 feet in seconds. And well, that has to be a radar anomaly. That's what the government said. It has to be an anomaly because there's nothing that can do that. Like, well, yeah, we know there's nothing that can do that. That's why it's a UFO, right? If we could build something that would do that, we'd be running this place.
Well, instead of those other people,
Right?
the lizard people, right?
Right. The people from Alpha Centauri, they got all the
people
answers.
running everything.
Right.
Oh, but so to go back to Peru, and kind of touch base with something that we talked about before is like everybody has the same stuff, and there's a lot of pyramids
Right.
in Peru. And all those pyramids, if you look, they follow a line for
Right.
the most part around the planet. And, everyone says, oh, it's just a coincidence. Well, why
Right.
is everybody building pyramids? And how are they building these pyramids with rocks that,
The
way
size of
more than
school
a
bus.
house,
Right.
and were
Granite.
moved easily and fit together so tightly that you can't get a sheet of paper in between them.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I've looked at some houses these days and they got cracks and everything else. And,
Right.
but yet these, rocks were moved and cut. Something you may want to look into. I don't know if you've looked at these, Bob, is
Oh yeah.
someone recently had done a study with bubbles and they put them on a speaker. And at different frequencies, these bubbles were making different light patterns, and you could almost make a holographic image inside the bubble with the light patterns because of the different frequencies of light. Just to show you what sound can do and sound waves could do. So we could be talking about some kind of high-frequency sound cutter,
Right.
or something that cut these stones to those exact measurements. I mean, if you look, even the professionals say there's no way that even we could, with our technology, put stones together with this precision, because you're talking millions of stones on these pyramids, and if you're off a centimeter at the bottom,
Right.
that just
it's off.
exponentially level higher. It just
Whole
gets
meters
worse
at
and
the
worse.
top.
So.
Right. And like I was talking about Pumapunku in the beginning, that's a site where there's the remnants of a prehistoric wall that has geometric stones cut and they interlock into each other, and the tolerances are in hundredths, not thousands. It's amazing. They say that there's doors that, of course, the door's gone now, but that were installed in Pumapunku's walls that were tons and tons, and you could move it with a finger because of how perfectly balanced it was. It's amazing. And then those are Paleolithic sites, so maybe we're not even talking Bronze Age tools. So how could you cut granite into a precise shape with a bone and some sticks? We can't do that today.
Heck, most people I know don't even have enough balance to stay on their feet.
Right.
And then it's mind-boggling. And if you think about it, it would be very self-centered of us to think that we're alone out there. If you look at the magnitude of what is beyond us, just in the Milky Way galaxy.
Oh yeah.
And then the galaxies upon galaxies upon galaxies that are out there, to think that even if we're one in a billion, guess what? That means there's still millions of habitable planets out there.
Right.
Because of how many, galaxies are out in the universe.
You can only roll the dice so many times before you come up with snake eyes again.
What's the, what is that? If you let a chicken peck on a piano, the probability it'll play Beethoven at some point.
Exactly. It has to happen. Statistically, it has to happen. Oh, what else do we want to talk about? The people in the village were reaching out for help, and they contacted the Peruvian Navy, and then the Peruvian Navy came out there, and they actually got into a firefight with these things. And you could hear this girl was live streaming on her phone, or maybe she recorded it, but I don't know. She was actually recording something else. And Todd was in the Army. I was in the Marine Corps. So we know what it sounds like to hear a firefight, right? It's not a couple people trying to hunt, a deer. These are fully automatic, crew-served weapons in the hills. You can hear them. And in the Marine Corps, whenever you're in a combat situation and you're trying to to lay down a field of fire, this is what you hear. All right, there's one heavy machine gun on the side, and then there's another heavy machine gun to the flank, and you do what's called talking back to each other, where you'll fire a burst of like 10 to 20 rounds, and then the other guy fires his 10 to 20 rounds, and then you go back and forth and back and forth. The idea is the enemy can't move because you're constantly pinning them down, and then your infantry can flank the enemy.
Suppressive fire.
Right. And that's what you hear in this video. You hear the machine gun, and then you hear a couple explosions, then you hear the other machine gun, and then a couple explosions. You hear they're walking their way up the mountain to engage these aliens. And then you start hearing the aliens retort, and it's lightning flashes lighting up the whole sky, bright blue lights. And you think, this is Peru. It's a 3-hour drive to get to this town. It takes you an hour and a half on a boat to get there. There's no way they have like Hollywood industrial lighting that could light up the entire sky like a lightning strike. It doesn't exist out there.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to the jetpack thing too.
Right.
It's like, you're really going to cart these, $500,000 jetpacks in here to steal a few
To get some rocks out of the river.
To get some gold out of a river.
Right. And their explanation doesn't hold any water anyway, because they say that these metal thieves were stealing the gold from the river. So they're panning gold out of the river, but then this conflict is going on in the mountains, in the interior of the jungle, where the Palicatas traditionally come from. So, which story is it? CNN? I mean, are they are they panning for gold like Yosemite Sam, or are they digging in the mountains? Like these two things don't jibe.
It kind of makes me wonder why. What brought them down to the town? What finally caused them to come out? Was it actually the people digging for gold? Because there are people up there like going through the mountains and everything, and
without
like
doubt,
gold and gold slavery right now is like, they're like, I've been saying like too much, I apologize, but they're cutting down massive trees up there.
Right.
I mean, they are completely knocking down, I say up there, it's south, but they're cutting down the rainforest just to make these giant gold mines out there.
Or oil pipelines too.
Yep.
That's a big thing through this area. Is the oil pipelines and oil rights in this region are a big deal.
And you're seeing a lot of area that hasn't been touched, and I think people are starting to press into those areas that haven't. They're just too thick. They're literally just too thick. You have to go in there with a machete and cover a mile a day maybe if you're lucky,
Right.
To walk into these places.
Exactly.
And I think maybe that might be what has sparked them up and brought them out.
Well, I think if we look at it, we cited three historical things, that the Peru, the Dulce base, and the Las Vegas backyard, and all of those three descriptions are identical. But the two of them have in common is they were both in digging. They were mining, or they were building a base in the ground. And I think that's where these aliens come from, is that they're living in the crust in the interior of the planet. And then it could have been that gold miners were up there scalping in the hills, and they blew open one of the accesses to these aliens,
Right.
to their lair, and they're like, oh no, we don't want you hairless monkeys in our area.
Well, I mean, we've got this energy literally below our feet. The further down you dig, the hotter it gets. So
Right.
you can use that heat as an energy source, to transfer it to whatever type of energy they need, I'm assuming.
Right.
So these bases could go down. I mean, miles. I won't say miles, because you get into like the 2-mile range, I believe it is, where it gets so hot that you can't even be down.
Like geothermal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other argument is they always say, well, what are these aliens eating down there? Well, some of the biologics that we recovered from crashes, they don't have digestive systems like we do. They don't even have a bowel. Like they ingest some sort of liquid that they live off of, and then their waste is excreted through their skin. And that goes along with a lot of times when people encounter these things, they say, oh man, they smell awful. You can smell them before you see them. It has like an ammonia kind of weird smell to it. So that could be too. They're not growing fruit underground if they don't need to. They just live off of some kind of liquid that it's a whole different system than we're even used to. I
don't even know where to go. I mean, especially because, with bringing things back around as the government is finally saying, yes, these things do exist.
Right.
So, it's hard to sit down and just wrap your head around everything. And I hope that Bob and I have piqued your interest today, and you go out there and you look on your own and you
do your own research.
Do some research, and you dig in and you look for these videos and try to find out, what you can on your own. Don't forget to follow Veritas Project on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and check out Investigator Todd on Facebook. And we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here for this week. And we'd like to thank you all for listening. And we'll see you next time. Bob, got anything closing thoughts?
In closing, if you're going to do any research on the internet, always check your sources. If you're going to read a book, make sure it's a first edition. Don't trust anybody's interpretation, and think for yourself.
All right, everybody. We'll catch you next time on the Veritas Project podcast.
Good night.